get paid, manage risk, scale up. We do not just fly, we on the sky, sky commander, die. See, above, go, we on, get ahead.
Okay, let's get started. Today, we are tackling a scenario that I think is, it's going to haunt the dreams of pretty much every single drone pilot listening to this right now. Honestly, it is the kind of thing that makes you question why you even bought a drone in the first place, or at least why you decided to try and make money with it.
Oh, yeah, it is a classic nightmare. It's that exact moment where the hobby turns into a burden.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the passion just gets sucked right out of the room.
It really does. So I want everyone listening to just picture this scenario for a second. You're sitting there maybe editing some photos or just relaxing on a weekend, and you get a call or an email. It is a potential client. They sound nice enough. Maybe it is a local real estate agent or a property manager. And they say, hey, I just need a quick favor. It's a super simple flight, 10 minutes tops. Just pop the drone up, snap a photo of this roof and bring it down. Can you do it for, and then they quote you some rock bottom price, like maybe $50 or maybe $75, because, well, in their mind, they are literally just paying for 10 minutes of your time. They've got a stopwatch in their head.
Right. They do. And the trap, and it absolutely is a trap, is that you sit there and you think, well, 10 minutes, surely that is easy money. I can do 10 minutes in my sleep. That is like, what, $300 an hour if you extrapolate it out?
Exactly. You are thinking about the fun part, the flying. Because we all love flying. But then reality sets in. Let's actually trace the timeline of this so-called 10-minute job. You hang up the phone. You have to go over to your gear shelf. You have to pull out the drone, pack the controller, grab the landing pad. You have to check the batteries. Are they charged? No. Okay, well, wait an hour for them to cycle up on the charger. Or maybe there is a firmware update that just tends to install right as you turn the controller on.
Oh, man, the firmware update is like the universal law of quick flights. It just always happens when you are in a rush.
Always. Every single time. Then you have to load the car. You have to drive there. Let's say it is only 20 minutes away, which honestly is generous in most cities. You get to the site. Now you have to find parking. You have to haul your gear to the launch spot. Maybe there's a security guard you have to talk to, or a homeowner who wanders out and wants to chat about how cool the drone is and ask if you can spy on their neighbors.
And you haven't even turned the drone on yet. You are literally already an hour into this whole process.
Exactly. Then you actually do the flight. It is 10 minutes. Great. You land, you pack up, you talk to the homeowner again because, of course, they want to see the screen and look at the photos. You drive home. That is another 20 minutes. You unpack. You take the SD card out. You put it in your computer. You transfer the files. You open them up. You realize the client wants them labeled in a very specific way. You edit them slightly, maybe a little color correction or cropping. You upload them to the cloud. You write the email. You send the invoice. Suddenly, that 10-minute flight has just completely eaten your entire Saturday afternoon.
It has. And if you sit down and do the math on what you actually earn per hour, I mean, after you subtract gas and insurance and your software subscriptions and your equipment depreciation, you realize you basically paid for the privilege of working for them. You essentially just donated your Saturday to a complete stranger.
It is the absolute classic trap, and that is exactly what we are going to unpack today in this deep dive. We are looking at a really extensive stack of sources that serve as a masterclass in drone business operations. We have got guides on base rates, travel policies, weather delays, managing scope creep. We are really moving away from this pilot mindset where you just love flying and hope to make a few bucks, and we are moving into a true CEO or operator mindset.
And that shift, I mean, that is the shift that separates the hobbyists who just completely burn out in year one from the operators who actually build sustainable, highly profitable businesses. It is all about understanding a fundamental truth. You are not selling minutes in the air. Let me say that again. If you sell minutes, you lose.
I really love that distinction, and we are going to hammer that home throughout this entire discussion today. So if we aren't selling minutes, what are we selling? Because the client certainly thinks they are buying minutes. Like you said, they think they are buying a stopwatch.
Yeah, they do. But you are actually selling two specific things. You are selling mission availability and you are selling decisions.
Okay, let's unpack those because those are great terms. Mission availability, that sounds... It sounds a little bit military, doesn't it?
It does, but it fits perfectly because aviation at its core is operational. Think about it. When a client books you, they aren't just booking the time the propellers are actively spinning. They are booking the fact that you A trained operator with proper certification, insured equipment, and the knowledge of complex airspace regulations are physically present and ready to solve their problem. You are reserving your professional capacity for them. That is mission availability. You are blocking your calendar so that literally no one else in the world can use you at that exact moment.
It makes me think of a lawyer on a retainer, or even a firefighter. You definitely don't pay a firefighter only for the exact minutes they have a hose turned on and are spraying water. You pay them to be at the station, trained, equipped, and ready to roll the second the alarm rings.
Precisely. That availability has immense value. And then the second part is decisions. That is the actual output. The client isn't buying a JPEG file from you. They are buying a photo that helps them sell a multi-million-dollar house. They aren't buying a colorful orthomosaic map just to look at it. They are buying the highly accurate data that helps them decide where to dig a trench or exactly how much roofing material they need to order. If you price your services based on the effort of flying the inputs, you will lose every time. But if you price based on the value of the decision you are enabling, the outcomes, you win.
Right. And one of the really foundational concepts in our source material today is this clear split between mission work and deliverable work. It seems like a lot of newer pilots mash these two things together, and that is where the confusion really starts to snowball.
They absolutely do, and that is exactly where the donated time we talked about comes from. Let's define them clearly right now, because this is the absolute bedrock of the pricing model we are going to build today. Mission work is everything required to execute the flight safely and legally. It is the pre-planning, checking the weather forecast 3 different times, reviewing the airspace charts, dealing with the travel friction, the on-site setup, the safety brief, coordinating with the client on the ground to make sure no one decides to walk under the drone while it is hovering.
So it is all the stuff that happens before you even think about pressing the record button, all the stuff the client often doesn't even see or just assumes is quote-unquote part of the job.
Exactly. It is the friction of operating in the real world. And then on the other side, there's deliverable work. That is the editing, the actual stitching together of the mapping images, the meticulous labeling of files, the quality assurance, checking for blur, checking for proper exposure, and then the final packaging for delivery.
And the problem is
if you pick the wrong pricing model, one of those 2 buckets just becomes entirely invisible to the client and to your bank account. If you charge a flat per photo rate, you're effectively doing all the mission work, the driving, the complex setup, the airspace checks, for free. If the site is difficult to access, you lose money. On the flip side, if you charge purely by the hour while you are on site, you might end up doing all the deliverable work, the editing and processing, for free at home later that night.
which is incredibly frustrating. And the goal of today's deep dive for you listening is to make absolutely sure you never work for free again. We have a serious roadmap ahead of us. We are going to completely dismantle the hourly rate myth, which I know is going to be a bit controversial for some folks listening. We are going to build a pricing sheet that actually stops that awful negotiation stress we all hate. And we are going to talk deeply about travel, weather, and the dark arts of scope creep.
Oh, scope creep is the silent killer of profit. It is that casual while you are there request. We are going to learn how to spot it instantly before it destroys your entire weekend.
So let's dive right into part one of the sources, the base rate models. Our sources heavily use this word anchor. They describe the base rate as the anchor. Why use that specific word? Why not just call it the price?
Because a base rate is not the total price. That is probably the single biggest misconception newbies have when starting out. The base rate is just the floor. It is the anchor that holds your business steady when the waves start crashing around you. And the waves are things like unexpected bad weather, really difficult site access, surprisingly complex airspace, or a client who suddenly changes their mind halfway through the shoot. If you don't have a strong anchor in place, those waves just wash away your entire profit margin. The whole goal of the base rate is to protect you financially when the mission inevitably starts being simple.
I see. And the sources lay out 4 distinct models for this base rate. Let's walk through them one by one, because I think everyone listening is going to identify with at least one of these and probably have this light bulb moment realizing why they have been leaving money on the table. Option 1 is the half-day base rate.
Yeah, this is probably the most common starting point for professional ground photographers and videographers who are just moving into drone work. The half-day rate is essentially selling a block of calendar inventory. You're looking at the client and saying, I am blocking out my morning, say 8 a.m. to noon, or my afternoon, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., exclusively for you.
Even if the actual drone flight is only 30 minutes?
Yes. Even if the flight is incredibly short. Because professional drone work is fundamentally lumpy, you might only be actively flying on site for 90 minutes, but by the time you prep all your gear, drive 45 minutes out there, do the actual safety checks and work, drive 45 minutes back, and offload all the heavy 4K data, you have completely burned half a day. You physically cannot reasonably book another paying job in that same time slot.
So it essentially prevents calendar theft.
That is a brilliant term for it that the text uses, calendar theft. If you charge strictly by the hour, and a job takes 2 hours of your time on site, you only get paid for 2 hours. But you can't really use the other 2 hours of that morning for anything productive because you were stuck in transit or transitioning between tasks. That time is effectively stolen from you. The half-day rate reclaims that stolen time. It is best for things like real estate shoots, small commercial properties, or basic roof inspections.
But there is a pretty obvious trap here, isn't there? Because I can hear the client saying, oh, great, I have you for 4 whole hours. Let's go drive around and shoot 3 different houses.
That is exactly the trap. The huge mistake is treating a half-day rate as a literal 4 hours of unlimited flight time.
Yeah.
It is not that at all. It is a mission block. It has to be strictly defined in your internal system and explicitly to the client as a specific operational envelope. For example, your contract should read, a half-day base rate includes pre-mission coordination, on-site work up to a defined cap of, say, 2 hours, and critically, 1 primary location.
Right. Boundaries are everything here. If you don't define that it is for 1 location, they will absolutely drive you all over town. And suddenly you are the one paying for gas to drive between 3 different sites, and your profitable half-day rate is just getting completely diluted by the minute.
Exactly. And half-day pricing is also incredibly great because it really reduces negotiation stress. It feels like a standard objective unit to the client. When you say our half-day rate is X, it sounds like an established menu item from a real business, not just a random guess you pulled out of thin air.
Okay, now let's move up the ladder a bit. Option 2 is the full-day base rate.
This is what we call the stability rate. This is for when you know going in that the job is going to consume your entire life for that day. We are talking about major utility sites, large infrastructure inspections, cell towers, remote pipeline jobs. Even if you aren't flying the drone for 8 solid hours, which honestly is physically impossible anyway due to battery limits and pilot fatigue, you are fully deployed to their project.
Why does this work so much better for those high-stakes corporate clients? Why couldn't you just charge them for 2 half-days back-to-back?
Because it entirely shifts the risk dynamic. In a full-day model, the operator is selling capacity and, above all, reliability. Think about a busy construction site. Maybe the foreman simply forgets the keys to the main gate. You have to sit and wait 2 hours in your truck. If you are charging hourly, the client is starting to stress out about the bill going up while you do nothing, and they might try to rush you later. If you are charging a full-day rate, you are perfectly calm. You are already paid to be there. If the weather is spotty and you have to wait for a tiny gap in the rain clouds to fly, you stay covered. It perfectly aligns your incentives with the client's actual need for reliability. You are there to get the job done, however long it takes within that day.
And the sources heavily mention a day rate ladder. It is not just one single number you throw out to everyone, right? I mean, you obviously don't charge the same for a simple open field survey as you do for a highly complex industrial inspection.
Correct. You should never have just one day rate. You should have a standard day rate and then a complex day rate, maybe for hazardous sites or areas with active heavy machinery where you need to wear full personal protective equipment and attend safety briefings. And then you definitely need a 2-operator day rate. You need to be able to scale your pricing up based on the sheer difficulty and risk of the mission. A 2-operator day, where you have a pilot in command and a dedicated visual observer, is a completely different product and a completely different price point. You're literally paying 2 salaries now, plus coordinating 2 schedules.
Okay, let's move to option 3. This is the one that I feel like clients love the most. The per deliverable base rate. They say, I want 1 map, or I want 15 photos, or I want 1 edited video.
Clients absolutely love it because it is incredibly concrete. It removes all the mystery from the purchasing process. They can compare it easily across vendors. They see Pilot A charges $100 for a map, and Pilot B charges $150. It makes procurement and their internal budgeting super easy. And honestly, a lot of operators love it too, because if you're really fast and highly efficient, if you have dialed in a great automated workflow, you can make a very, very high effective hourly rate.
But, and I sense a massive but coming here.
But it fails miserably if the site is even slightly unpredictable. Say you charge $200 for a set of architectural photos. But when you arrive, you find out the site is suddenly in a restricted flight zone that requires you to sit on hold on the phone with air traffic control for an hour. Or you have to get a LANC authorization that just keeps glitching on your phone. Or maybe the security guard is at lunch and makes you wait outside for an hour. You're eating all of those delays out of your own pocket. You quoted strictly for the deliverable, but the mission friction completely destroyed your profit margin.
So how do you actually fix that? Do you just completely abandon per deliverable pricing altogether?
No, you don't have to abandon it. You just need strict guardrails. Two very specific ones. First, you need a minimum mission fee. That way you are always covered for the basic cost of showing up and mobilizing your gear. The per deliverable price is then layered on top of that base fee. Second, you absolutely need strict revision policies, because quoting for one video is incredibly vague. Does that mean a simple 30-second clip for social media? A 5-minute corporate documentary? Can they ask you to change the background music 10 different times? If you don't define the exact box, the client will naturally expand it until you are working for free.
That makes a lot of sense. Guardrails really seem to be a recurring theme here today. Option 4 is the per site base rate. This is generally for those big multi-location jobs, right? Like a client says, go shoot these 12 retail chain locations.
Exactly. It is a solid middle ground. It scales really well for high volume work. If a corporate client says, hey, we have 50 sites across the state, you can't really quote 50 individual half days easily without making their head spin. Per site makes the math really clean for them. But the massive trap here is the word similar. The client always says, don't worry, we have 12 similar sites.
But reality heavily disagrees with the word similar.
Reality always disagrees. Site A might be an empty parking lot on a quiet Tuesday morning. Super easy. You are done in 20 minutes. But Site B is located right next to an international airport. It has high-tension power lines crisscrossing the property, and it requires a corporate security escort who shows up an hour late. That is hard, and it takes 2 hours just to get in the air. If you charge a flat per-site rate for both, you inevitably lose money on Site B.
So the solution there is what the sources call standard unit plus modifiers.
Yes. You quoted something like this. The base price per site is X. However, if a site is located in controlled airspace, add Y. If a site requires a mandatory escort or special safety briefing, add Z. If a site is more than 30 miles from the city center, add a travel modifier. You absolutely have to protect yourself against the inherent variability of the real world.
Which brings us perfectly to the hybrid solution. The sources argue pretty strongly that this is the absolute strongest approach for true professional operators. They call it the operator-safe structure.
This really is the holy grail of pricing. It combines the best elements of everything we just talked about to cover both your time risk and your deliverable risk. Here is the actual formula the experts recommend building into your business. First, a base mission fee. This firmly implies that you simply do not roll the truck out of the driveway for free. Second, an on-site rate to cover your time risk while deployed. Third, deliverable packages. This is what the client actually thinks they are buying. And fourth, modifiers to cover travel, complexity, or rush delivery requests.
It does sound a little complicated when you list it out like a math equation, but when you actually present it on paper, it is incredibly clear. You are completely separating the act of showing up from the act of handing over the finished files.
And that separation, that clarity, is what saves your business. It systematically prevents the two biggest financial disasters in this industry: undercharging for the friction of just getting there and setting up, which is the mission work, and undercharging for the processing and editing work after you leave, which is the deliverable work.
Right. I want to circle back to something you touched on earlier. This whole idea that a tiny job isn't actually tiny at all. This leads us right into part 2 of our deep dive, the profitable minimum.
This is so critical. We really need to discuss the minimum charge philosophy. We have to completely dispel the idea that having a minimum charge is somehow about greed. It is not about being greedy. It is entirely about making the hidden costs of your business visible.
Visibility of what exactly?
Of the hidden chain of events required to do any job safely. Let's actually walk step by step through the hidden chain of a so-called tiny job. A client calls and asks for a quick photo. Step 1 is scheduling. Going back and forth on emails, finding a date, that takes real time. Step 2 is the airspace check. Is the location even legal to fly in? Is there a temporary flight restriction because the president is in town? You have to pull up the charts and check. Step 3 is packing the gear, making sure batteries are charged. Formatting the SD card so you don't run out of space mid-flight. Step 4 is the drive itself, dealing with traffic, finding a place to park.
And step 5 is the safety stand, on-site rate, checking for power lines, keeping an eye out for people walking dogs, looking for any physical obstacles.
Exactly. Then step 6 is the actual flight, the 10 minutes the client thinks they are paying for. Step 7 is packing up and doing the drive back. Step 8 is the data management, doing backups, naming files properly, basic editing. And finally, step 9 is generating the invoice, emailing the client, and eventually chasing them down for payment 30 days later.
Wow, when you list it all out sequentially like that, a 6-minute flight is undeniably a 3-hour workflow from start to finish.
It is. And if you charge $50 for that entire process just because, quote, it is just a quick flight, unquote, you are making significantly less than minimum wage. You are actually donating your car's depreciation, your fuel, and your expensive insurance costs directly to the client. You are actively paying your own money for the privilege of working for them.
So the firm rule the sources suggest is this. If the job requires you to leave your home or office with your gear, it is not a tiny job, it is a minimum mission.
That is the golden rule of profitability.
Yeah.
Mobilization itself is the product. The drone is just the tool you use once you get there. If you have to mobilize, you have to charge a minimum rate that covers that entire 3-hour workflow we just listed out. It genuinely does not matter if the camera shutter clicks one single time or 1,000 times. The heavy cost to your business was in the mobilization.
So how do we actually calculate that minimum floor? The sources go into detail about a bottom-up method.
Right, so you have to know what they call your loaded hourly cost. And to be clear, this isn't just what you personally want to pay yourself as a salary. It is your desired wage, plus the cost of fuel, plus your insurance premiums, both liability and whole coverage for the drone, plus your monthly software subscriptions like Adobe or Drone Deploy, plus the depreciation of your hardware, plus a budget for replacement parts like props or batteries, plus your tax burden.
Yeah, that really adds up fast when you put it all on a spreadsheet.
It does. It is sobering. Let's say you crunch those numbers and your loaded cost to operate is $100 an hour. You take that number and you multiply it by your minimum mission block. Let's say we use that 3-hour workflow we just discussed. So that is $300 just in hard cost to run your business for that morning. Then you must add your profit margin on top of that, because you are running a business, not a charity. If you want a healthy, growing business, maybe that final minimum floor becomes $450 or $500. That is your absolute floor. You simply cannot go below that number, or you are actively hurting your own business.
I really love the weekend shield concept mentioned in this section too. This profoundly resonated with me when I read it.
Oh, this is a total lifestyle saver.
Yeah.
Weekend time is incredibly scarce. It is your critical recovery time. It is your time with your family or friends. The policy suggestion in the sources is beautifully simple. Any weekend booking automatically triggers a half-day minimum rate. No exceptions.
Even for that tiny 10-minute flight we keep talking about.
Especially for the 10-minute flight. Because think about it. If you book a small job on a Saturday at 2 in the afternoon, you have effectively destroyed your entire Saturday. You can't go away for the weekend. You can't even fully relax in the morning because you were stuck in this weird work mode waiting for your time slot to roll around.
Yeah.
That massive personal cost needs to be priced into the job. It naturally filters out the clients who just want quick favors, and it ensures that if you are sacrificing your weekend, it is at least financially worth it for you.
And what happens when a client pushes back and objects? When they hit you with the classic, but it's just a 10-minute flight?
You don't argue. You just have the script ready. You say, the flight time itself is quick, yes, but our minimum fee covers professional mobilization, safe site setup, data capture, and delivery packaging. And here is the lever. This is the absolute pro move to diffuse the tension. You follow it up by saying, if you want a lower rate, we do have several weekday slots available next week.
Oh, that is brilliant. That immediately puts the ball completely back in their court. You aren't flat out saying no to them. You're just aggressively protecting your premium weekend time.
Exactly. You're acting like a business owner, not a pushover freelancer. You're actively teaching them how to buy your services efficiently.
Okay, let's transition and talk about the logistics. The real world stuff that actually eats up the calendar. Part 3 of the sources, travel and weather.
Travel is so often treated as an extra or just dismissed as gas money. That is completely the wrong mindset. Travel is calendar inventory. Every single hour you spend sitting behind the wheel driving is an hour you cannot be out flying for another paying client, editing footage, or aggressively marketing to find new clients. It is a massive opportunity cost.
The sources talk about reframing this communication from petty to professional. Petty is charging someone for gas. Professional is having a mobilization policy.
It really is all about language and framing. If you tell a corporate client, hey, I need $20 for gas, you sound like a college kid doing a favor for a neighbor. If you instead say, our standard mobilization policy covers travel within the local zone, You sound like a sophisticated logistics company. You are managing a commercial fleet, even if that fleet currently consists of just you and your Honda Civic.
And zone pricing seems to be the heavy recommendation here for most everyday operators.
It is definitely the easiest system to sell to a client. It's boring, it's standard, and it's objectively fair. You set it up like this. Zone 1 is local. Maybe that is a 20-mile radius included in your base rate, or it has a very small flat fee. Zone 2 is regional. That triggers a higher flat fee. Zone 3 is remote. That triggers an even higher flat fee. Clients readily accept this because it is predictable. They do not want to see a running taxi meter, and they don't want to have to check Google Maps to see if you took the long way to pad the bill. They just want to know, okay, our site is in Zone 2, so travel costs X amount. Simple.
But for the really big industrial jobs, the deep dive sources strongly suggest moving to a portal-to-portal billing model.
Yeah, that is specifically for the complex commercial stuff. Portal to portal means you start billing from the exact moment you leave your base of operations until the moment you return. This is absolutely crucial for industrial work because very often the travel is the hardest and most dangerous part of the whole job. Think about driving out to a remote cell tower or navigating a muddy logging road to check a pipeline. If you don't charge for that intense travel time, you are giving away half your potential revenue. If the drive takes 4 hours and the flight takes 30 minutes, the drive itself is the job.
Now let's tackle weather. This is arguably the biggest enemy of every single drone pilot out there, and naturally the biggest source of arguments with clients.
The conflict always comes from a fundamental mismatch in perspective. The client sitting in their office thinks, well, weather is your problem, you're the drone pilot, figure it out. The operator sitting at the site thinks, I reserved this entire day just for you, I turned down 2 other paying jobs, and I certainly cannot control the wind.
The sources break this friction down into 3 distinct types of losses: safety loss, productivity loss, and calendar loss.
This is such a brilliant way to frame it. Safety loss is entirely non-negotiable. You literally cannot fly if it is physically dangerous. High winds, heavy rain, icing conditions, the drone stays grounded. Productivity loss is a little more subtle. You technically can fly safely, but the resulting data will be garbage. Maybe it's just way too windy to get sharp photos for a map, so everything is blurry. Or maybe the midday sun is so incredibly harsh that your cinematic real estate video is just totally blown out and useless. And then calendar loss is just the brutal fact that the day is gone regardless of whether you flew or not. You block the time and you can't get it back.
The solution proposed to mitigate all this is the weather window.
Yes. Stop selling a specific rigid hour on the calendar. Sell a flexible window. You tell the client, we will get this data captured between Tuesday and Thursday of next week. You, as the professional operator, pick the absolute best day based on the aviation forecast. If Tuesday looks bad, you don't even stress, you just plan to fly Wednesday. It completely removes the negative feeling of a quote-unquote cancellation. It is no longer a failure, it is just smart optimization. The client ultimately gets the best possible data, and you get the operational flexibility you need.
But what happens if you are deployed to a remote location? Let's say you drove 5 hours to an industrial site, you check into a hotel, and then a massive, unforecasted storm hits the next morning.
That is what the sources call the shared risk or deployment model. If you deployed, the mobilization fee is fully earned. You drove the truck out there, you spent the time. That money is yours. If you have to pack up and come back a week later, that triggers a remobilization fee. You absolutely cannot absorb the massive cost of a 5-hour drive just because Mother Nature decided not to cooperate.
It sounds a little harsh when you say it like that, but I guess if it is clearly stated in the policy up front, it's just business?
That is the entire key.
Yeah.
It has to be clearly written in the policy and agreed upon before the storm hits. The contract needs to say mobilization is fully earned upon deployment. If the client knows that going in, it is just standard logistics. If you try to spring it on them later while they're already annoyed about the delay, it instantly turns into a massive fight over the invoice.
This logic leads us perfectly into the primary tool that makes all of this boundary setting possible. Part 4, the pricing sheet.
The pricing sheet is your absolute shield against chaos. It is not just a static price list you send out. It is a comprehensive system.
The sources refer to this as the pricing sheet advantage. It basically turns quoting into a menu selection process rather than a stressful creative writing exercise every time an email comes in.
We have all been there. You are staring at a blank email draft, biting your nails, wondering, how much should I charge this guy? Will he balk if I say $500? That anxiety is what they call the blank page tax. It causes huge delays in your response time. It causes massive self-doubt. And usually, almost universally, it leads to emotional discounting. You lower the price before you even send the email because you're scared they will say no, because they sounded nice on the phone, or just because you're hungry for the work.
A well-built pricing sheet completely kills that dynamic. You set up tiered packages right, the classic good, better, best model.
Exactly. It completely changes the client's psychological mindset from how can I haggle this price down to which level of service do I select. It is basic psychology 101. If you give someone one single price, their brain immediately asks, is this number too high? If you give them 3 distinct options, say a basic proof tier, a communication tier, and a highly detailed decision tier, their brain switches gears and asks, okay, which one of these actually fits my needs? You shift the entire conversation from a confrontational yes or no to a collaborative A, B, or C.
And then below those tiers, you have your modifiers. These act as operational switches.
Right. And these modifiers need to be strictly objective triggers. It can't be based on feelings like, well, this job feels kind of hard, so I'll add $50. It needs to be concrete. Things like, this job features extra locations, or this job requires a rushed delivery turnaround, or this job is located in highly controlled airspace.
Speaking of controlled airspace, the sources very explicitly mention the hard regulatory costs. Things like navigating Canada's NAV drone system or dealing with the LA-ANC system in the US.
This is a cost that is so often overlooked by pilots. People tend to think, oh, well, getting the airspace authorization is free on the app, so I won't charge for it. Well, sometimes there are actual fees, especially with the new Canadian regulations coming down the pipeline in 2025 involving complex operations and special flight operation certificates. But honestly, even if the permit itself is technically free, your time to file the paperwork, monitor the approval, and coordinate with air traffic control is certainly not free. Regulatory compliance takes real time and expertise. It absolutely should be a distinct line item on your sheet. You label it regulatory coordination or airspace authorization. Putting it on the sheet doesn't make you look greedy. It actually makes you look significantly more professional because it shows you operate by the book.
One specific strategy the sources highlight that I found fascinating is the scope lever. They say when a client comes back and says, hey, your quote is just too expensive, you absolutely do not just lower the number.
Never just lower the number. Never. If you simply lower the price without changing the scope of the work, you have just admitted to the client that your first price was totally made up and padded. You instantly lose all their trust. Instead, you use the scope lever. You reply and say, I completely understand the budget constraints. We can absolutely hit that target number if we remove the second location from the plan. Or we can hit that number if we switch from a stressful 24-hour rush turnaround to our standard 5-day turnaround. Or if we completely remove the fully edited video and just deliver the raw high-res photos.
Wow, so you keep your own profit margin totally intact, but you successfully fit their strict budget by simply doing less work.
Exactly. You are fiercely defending your professional value while still being incredibly helpful and accommodating. You are collaborating with them on a business solution, not just weekly caving in on price.
That is so powerful. Let's move to part 5 of the deep dive. Defense Against the Dark Arts. I really love this title. We are talking about the twin demons of scope creep and endless revisions.
Oh, this is where you lose your absolute sanity as an operator. This is exactly where the project that looked so incredibly profitable on paper slowly turns into an absolute nightmare over 3 weeks.
We really need to help people identify the squeeze. What are the major red flags to look out for?
The sources list a few absolute classics. First is the low anchor. That is the client who opens the conversation with, hey, what's your absolute cheapest price? This instantly signals they view your highly specialized skill as a cheap commodity. Second is the vague scope. They say, we just need some cool footage of the site. This is a massive trap. If they don't explicitly define what they want, they will literally never be satisfied with what you deliver. And then there is the most dangerous one of all, the while you're there trap.
Oh, yes. Hey, while you're out there, can you just quickly fly over and shoot the building next door, too? It'll only take a second.
That is the trap. It literally never takes just a second. Shooting a whole new building requires a brand new setup, a new safety scan of the area, new airspace checks, and a whole new set of massive 4K files to manage and process later. The strict defense against this is defining a location in your contract as one separate setup and capture cycle. If you have to pack the drone into its case, physically move your car or walk to a new spot and set up all over again, even if it is literally just across the street or right around the corner, that is officially a new location. It is a priced add-on, period.
And then there is the perfection loop, the endless, soul-crushing, unlimited revisions.
This nightmare happens when you accidentally sell feelings instead of specifications. When you tell a client, Don't worry, we will create editing until you are completely happy. Happy is entirely subjective. You can literally never finish happy. You always need to sell specific specs.
So how do we actually fix this revision loop once and for all?
You firmly define what constitutes one revision round in your initial agreement. But the definition itself is the real secret sauce here. You define it as one consolidated list of changes sent in a single message.
Oh, that is brilliant. So no drip-feeding emails over 5 days.
Absolutely no drip feeding. Yeah. You do not want to email at 9 a.m. saying change the music, and then another email at 10 a.m. saying make the font bigger, and then another one at 2 p.m. saying actually my boss hates the music, let's go back.
Yeah.
That is total chaos, and it ruins your workflow. You demand one single list, you open the project file, you do all the work once, and version 2 is delivered. Anything requested after that is strictly billed hourly or quoted as an entirely additional round of revisions.
And the sources also mentioned something called the style lock. What is that?
Before you commit to doing the full heavy edit, especially for long video projects, you send them a tiny 15-second sample clip, or even just 3 still style frames. You say, here is the overall vibe. Do you like this color grade? Do you like the pacing of the cuts? If they reply and say yes, they are completely locked in on style. They cannot come back 2 weeks later when the video is done and say, actually, we decided we want a fast-paced, energetic techno video when they already explicitly approved a slow cinematic one.
Yeah.
Changing the fundamental style after a lock is a paid change order, not a free revision.
And for the really advanced technical stuff like 2D mapping or thermal roof inspections, the sources suggest you don't just sell files, you sell decision kits.
This is a fantastic mindset shift for the higher-end technical operators. Don't just sell an orthomosaic TIFF file, sell a complete site decision kit. And crucially, you absolutely must include your technical assumptions in writing. You have to state clearly, this map's visual accuracy heavily depends on ambient light and wind conditions on the day of capture. If you don't state that clearly, and it happens to be a super windy day so the trees look blurry, the client will inevitably blame you for the map not being perfect. You have to aggressively set the expectations that the final output is highly condition dependent. You are capturing messy reality with a camera. You are not creating a perfect computer simulation from scratch.
Okay, we have covered the pricing structure, the core logic, and the heavy defenses. Now we need to bring it all together in action in part 6, the confident pricing script. This really feels like it is mostly about the mental shift.
It entirely is. It is about actively moving from the mindset of the apologetic freelancer who is just desperately grateful for any scrap of work to the confident risk manager who is running a legitimate, profitable business. Clients can smell fear over the phone. If you sound unsure about your own prices, they will instinctively try to negotiate you down. But if you sound like you are operating a structured system, they will respect you and trust you.
So let's actually role play the master script provided in the source material right now. I'll play the part of the potential client calling you up. Hey there, how much do you charge for a job? I really just need a quick flight.
I totally understand. The way our business works is this. We do not charge by flight minutes. We charge for the mission operations and the final deliverables. Our base fee covers professional mobilization, safe site setup, and the data capture itself. Then you simply choose the deliverable package that best fits your project needs. If there is added complexity like extra locations or a rush delivery request, we use standard transparent add-ons so there are absolutely no surprises on your final invoice.
Honestly, that actually feels really incredibly good to hear as a client. It sounds safe, like you know exactly what you were doing.
Exactly. It immediately and politely declines their stopwatch framing. It tells you immediately that I have a professional structure, and it beautifully frames any potential add-ons as providing clarity, using the phrase so there are no surprises, because literally everyone on earth hates getting surprises in their billing.
And what if I push back a bit? What if I say, well, that sounds really great and professional, but I really have a super tight budget on this one?
I would say, I hear you. The absolute fastest way to fit within your budget constraints is to adjust the scope of the project, not the quality of the work. We can easily look at removing a location, simplifying the final deliverables, or moving to our standard turnaround time instead of a rush order. Which of those factors is most important to you to keep?
It really is bulletproof. It forces me to make the hard choice, not you. But what about the ultimate objection, the competition? What if I say, well, my nephew just got a drone for Christmas, and he said he'll do it for $50 and a 6-pack.
I love that one. I would say, I am more than happy to help you compare. Please send me his detailed scope of work, his exact revision limits, his aviation liability insurance coverage limits, and his guaranteed turnaround time. Once I have those, we can easily compare apples to apples.
Which, of course, the $50 nephew absolutely does not have any of.
Exactly. You win the job by overwhelmingly being the professional in the room. You win by clearly showing them the massive amount of hit or risk they are taking on with the $50 guy. You show them what they are not getting with him, which is rigorous safety, operational reliability, and crucial liability protection if that drone crashes through a window.
Wow, we have covered a truly massive amount of ground today. This really has been a full masterclass in professional drone operations. Let's briefly summarize the key takeaways for the listeners taking notes.
Gladly. Number 1, price the mission, do not price the minute. Stop selling your airtime. Number 2, always use a minimum charge. Fiercely protect your calendar from the devastating hidden costs of so-called tiny jobs. Number 3, treat travel and weather as firm operational policies. They are standard logistics. They are not points for argument. Number 4, build and use a pricing sheet. It completely automates your confidence and permanently stops the blank page quoting panic. And number 5, strictly define your revisions. Stop the perfection loop by using the consolidated list rule in every contract.
That is a phenomenal list. I want to leave the listeners with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over today.
Yeah.
We obviously talked a lot about money and pricing strategy today, but I want you, listening right now, to ask yourself a hard question. How much of your own hard-earned money are you currently donating to your clients?
That truly is the ultimate question. Because every single time you don't charge for your pre-planning, for your driving time, for your complex setup on site, you are literally writing a blank check to your client. You are subsidizing their profitable business with your incredibly valuable time.
And there is a real safety angle to all of this too, isn't there? It is not just about the money.
Absolutely there is. A solid pricing sheet isn't just about maximizing revenue. It is fundamentally about safety. Think about it. When you are paid properly for your time, you don't rush the job. You don't skip steps on your safety checklist because you are panicked about taking too long. You don't try to force a flight in bad weather because you are desperately relying on that tiny paycheck to cover your gas home. Profitable pilots are, without a doubt, much safer pilots.
I absolutely love that final thought. Profitable pilots are safer pilots. Fly safe, everyone, and price smart. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above. Go beyond. Get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.